What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Robert Cessna. It's been a minute, and there's been plenty of things that have happened around Aggieland since we last talked on the podcast. Cease, let's start with women's basketball because all of a sudden, A&M's season has been completely revived, and what seemed like a year that was dead in the water yet again, the Aggies have turned the corner, and they've got still an outside shot of making the NCAA tournament, which a month ago seemed inconceivable.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. The people that have just casually, unfortunately, I attended a funeral yesterday, but people are talking about A&M women's basketball. And I wrote a column, about a month ago. Unfortunately, people who didn't care about women's basketball was talking about women's basketball because how poorly they were doing. So now you talk about a reversal in a 5-game span where they've won 4, and people ask, what's the difference? All I can say is the light went on. The 12 newcomers, they did have a lot. It just took longer than anticipated. They didn't have that 3-4 extra games they needed in non-conference. They were bad. That's the bottom line. Now, the best thing I can say is on Sunday against Arkansas, a team they should beat, they come out and look like the favorite from start to end. And they haven't done that for 2 years. They've always, they haven't been able to do that. They've had a couple stretches, but unfortunately they always find a way to lose, and for the most part. But they got it going right now. And we know basketball and baseball, for example, is sports that you play more than one game a week. You want to get back out there. Right now, the women's basketball team wants to get back out there. Unfortunately, they got hot. There's only one home game left. So you go see them Thursday night. It might be the last time, unless they get WNIT or something like that. But the good news is they're playing well.
They really are. Big game Thursday night against Mississippi
Huge.
State. If they are going to make the NCAA tournament, they've got to beat the Bulldogs Thursday night.
Got to win that one.
They play Ole Miss to close the regular season on Sunday. That's on the road. But in Ole Miss, they're in the top 25. That's right.
Ole Miss is 19th. They're 20th in the net rankings. They've got like 4 quality wins. They could lose the rest of their games. They're going to the tournament. Mississippi State is the last one in now in Charlie Cream. So this is a game that A&M has to win because they lose that. And I say that they're not going to go down and win the SEC tournament, but that's what it would take if they lose. Well, I say that. If they lost to Mississippi State and turned around and beat Ole Miss and would beat 2 ranked teams in the SEC tournament, that would probably put them in.
Well, they're going to need to keep winning.
They need to beat Mississippi State.
They need to keep winning. And, just look at some of the grit and resolve that some of these players have shown. Pryor's just been fantastic for them. Ware has shown a lot of grit these last few games. You got to tip your cap for the effort when they could have just thrown in the towel at some point this season.
Yeah, and you throw in other peripheral players are starting to play well. And they did, before they might have had, we call her Fats because her name is like Fatima Jana or whatever, so they call her Fats. Everybody knows who Fats is. It was Fats and Pryor, basically that was it. And sometimes if one of them got shot down, it was nobody. So they're 7 or 8 deep right now, which is nice.
Well, on the men's side, the Aggies are trying to lock down an NCAA tournament berth. They're currently on the right side of the bubble, floating around anywhere between that 8 to 10 seed range, depending on which bracketology you look at across the landscape. Needless to say, pretty much all of the mock brackets that are tracking men's basketball right now, they have A&M in, but the Aggies, they still got some work to do to solidify their spot in the big dance. They couldn't lose out probably and still make it. Big road game tonight. We're filming on a Wednesday at Arkansas. This is going to be a really hard game for A&M to win. Yeah. Arkansas is a tough place to play. They're a very talented team. They shoot very efficiently. But on the bright side, A&M's coming off their best defensive performance probably in conference play at Oklahoma on Saturday night when they held the Sooners to just less than 33% from the field. Oklahoma's 25% in the second half. And so if A&M can come away with a win at Fayetteville, that would probably be the best feather in their cap so far this season, I would say. A road win over a top 20 team, that's a pretty good feather in the cap in my books. They get a home game against Texas on Saturday. they beat Texas, but as we know, hard to beat a team twice in the same season. And A&M hadn't swept the Longhorns in men's basketball since 1987. My parents were in high school then, Cease.
Yeah, remember, they didn't play for 12 years.
That's true.
So, even if you go to 2000 and say 9 or whatever, that's still 16 years. We're not talking about a very small sample. It's a pretty good sample size. And you're right about all these things. An Arkansas game kind of worries me about A&M because the way A&M plays and the way Bucky is, they're going to go in there and give it all they have. And that's a tough road trip. Tough place to play. They only lost one home game there this year. So my concern is if A&M goes up and shoots a lot of its bullets and it doesn't hit the mark, and let's say they lose a heartbreaker or whatever, then you come home and you got to turn around and play Texas, your rival. You don't want to have one loss lead to 2. But like you said, if they go in and beat Arkansas, then oh my gosh, it's sky high. So this is what makes basketball, because we saw, if you're playing nationally, Houston just lost 3 in a row for the first time like in forever. Kansas was going to lose back-to-back games at the Fog for a long time. This is what basketball is about. It's what can you do right now. So A&M, both programs. We're talking about A&M men going to the tournament and locking up a spot when people were saying 3 months ago, would this team win 4 or 5 conference games?
Yeah, what Bucky's done with this team, as we've said before on this podcast, has been just nothing short of remarkable. And so if A&M gets one more win in SEC play, that would guarantee an above 500 finish in league play.
Huge.
I find it hard to believe that an A&M team that finishes above 500 in conference play wouldn't get into the NCAA tournament. That I would find it hard to believe that wouldn't be the case. But
yeah, you always got to see what happens around the rest of the nation sometimes.
Absolutely.
And we see that. A&M's been through this before a few years ago. You want to end all suspense. So they need to go 2 games over, then you don't have to worry about it.
Well, the good news for them, they close the season with LSU on the road, and LSU has had just a horrific year again. They've really struggled in a lot of ways. So you got to think that's a game that they can get. It'll be a tough one. A&M always has a tough time over in Baton Rouge a lot of years. Even last year when Wade Taylor broke the scoring record, it was a single digit game at the end. So that's one they can't overlook for sure. But yeah, if they get to 11 SEC wins, I'd feel pretty good. The one thing though about this game on Wednesday against Arkansas, what helps A&M, Arkansas is not that great of a rebounding team. And so A&M at times, they've really struggled with teams that have effective size and can really dominate on the glass. You think about the loss to Tennessee. You think about the loss to Missouri. Those were 2 games that A&M really struggled in those categories, and it caught up to them at the end in some tight losses that had they won those games, we'd probably say, well, how high of a seed can A&M get?
Yeah. No.
But so definitely a big game this week and an important close, no doubt. But, hey, it's almost March, and this is the time of year people want to be talking about basketball in the NCAA tournament. And the A&M men and women, they're right in the thick of things as we hit the home stretch.
Unfortunately, a lot of times around here, March Madness was an indication you need to go to the diamond sports, which A&M has historically been very good in for decades. But March Madness, you got to be part of March Madness. And right now, A&M is part of it. And it's just a different vibe with Bucky and Buzz. Now, they went like 3-4 straight years in Buzz, but his analytical deals and whatever, I think a lot of times Bucky just seems more energetic, enthusiastic, and he looks like he's studied film sometimes for like 18 hours in a row with coffee. And you get behind a guy like that. So, March Madness.
March Madness for sure. Hey, speaking of the diamond sports, though, on one end, A&M baseball team, they've started off pretty dang hot, and they've had some unexpected heroes step up to the occasion when they needed. On the other hand, the A&M softball team, look, they've had about probably as hard of a schedule as you could have up to this point of the year, but kind of some tough losses in that mix at 10-6 this point of the season.
Yeah, softball is so much different than baseball when you look at A&M's with the 2 tournaments where there was like 13 ranked tournament teams out of the top 25 at both those events, and you're playing 2 or 3 ranked teams every time. because they don't worry about losing games, because you're going to get the SEC where there's 11 ranked teams and what have you, a la so many sports. You're going to get to show your worth. And right now, we knew A&M had a lot of holes in softball, particularly losing Emily Kennedy, an All-American, and they've lost like five position players. So this was somewhat expected. Personally, I didn't think they would struggle that much in the circle. They're getting up 14 home runs. They're two leading pitchers. So I think that's cause for concern. But now they come home. They're going to play 12 games, I think 7 at home. This is two and a half week of rebounding, refreshing, get ready for SEC play. So I think A&M softball is still where everybody thought they would be. Now, it'd have been great if they'd have won half those games. Instead of being like 1-5 or 1-6, they'd be 3-3 or 3-4, 4-3. But the deal is now the first thing is they need to move forward to make sure they in the top 16 seed. Right now they're anywhere from 13th to 18th, depending who you want to look at. So, but Tricia Ford has proven, like all teams, you put it together. Like she says, I got all the pieces. Just got to put the puzzle together.
Well, on the baseball field, A&M's really put some good puzzle pieces together, and they've dealt with some injuries as well. Chris Akopian's missed 6 straight games now with a little bit of a minor back issue. He's hopeful to return this weekend as A&M goes up to Arlington, plays in that multi-team event. They get Virginia Tech Friday, number 1 UCLA Saturday, and Arizona State on Sunday. The story so far, though, has been the pitching, and especially the starting pitching. Shane Sadeo, Weston Moss, and Aiden Sims, they've been just a 3-headed monster so far. A&M went 47 1/3 innings, Cease, without issuing a walk.
Pretty amazing college baseball.
It's pretty amusing at any level of baseball when you think about it. And look, they're dominating the zone, they're throwing strikes, and they've got some nasty pitches, all 3 of them, they can get strikeouts on when they get to those 2-strike counts. Sims' sweeper might be the most filthy pitch that I've seen in a while. That thing, it's got some serious run, and he sits it in the mid-80s. It's a pretty lethal pitch. Then at the plate, you look at what they've got. Caden Sorrell, he's 100% again. Well, actually, he hadn't been 100% because he cut his hand, getting spiked, sliding into second base. He joked that he got a hard time for not wearing one of those sliding mitts, and he'll be doing that moving forward. He learned his lesson. But look, guy's hit, 5 home runs now. He's leading the team in RBI. That's the kind of production that they expected to get from Caden Sorrell. Moving Gavin Grahovac to first base, that seemed to be a seamless transition, and he's been playing pretty well at the plate, coming off that shoulder injury from last year. And oh, by the way, in case you hadn't heard, A&M's got 3 freshmen that are just really tearing it up right now. But alas, it's going to be a big test this weekend, playing some power conference teams. Going to really get tested on Saturday against UCLA. And I get it, the Bruins, they lost a midweek game last night to San Diego State. But this is a team that everyone around the country is thinking that pencil them into Omaha. They'll be there in mid to late June.
Yeah, well, baseball, it's always early. You don't know who's really good and who's not. Like you said, okay, UCLA's there, but, is Penn going to go back and win the Ivy League? You know what I'm saying is you play some of these teams, then you play some other teams, you go, oh, this is a mid-major, then they don't do anything. That's just the nature of baseball because like you said, you rely so much on pitching. The fact that A&M's got 3 pitchers that came out on a weekend, didn't walk a batter, and like you said, no matter who you're playing, if you got pitching, you're going to be in contention. And you're in the SEC, you better have pitching because everybody's got a Friday night stud. So when you look at that league, anybody can win the Friday night game. And then if you're deep enough and you have a solid Sunday starter, as A&M does, a lot of times you're going to split the first 2 games. It's just the way the nature of the SEC. So if you got depth, come Sunday, you start racking up those two out of 3 weekends, you're in good shape.
Well, and the fact of the matter, too, is A&M's playing pretty clean in the field behind their pitching, so getting a lot of outs. And Mike Early was pretty frank with us after Saturday's game. He wasn't very pleased with how they kind of approached things at the plate. They kind of had a meeting in the clubhouse right after the game before they came back out and got all their stuff. A&M responded really well on Sunday in that series finale against Penn. And then obviously they exploded for 25 runs against the Lamar team that really had a hard time locating the zone last night on the mound. But bats trending in the right direction after kind of a tough game where A&M struck out 17 times against Penn. So
in other words, did the Frank Early show up or the Mike Early? It's like, so he's going to have a nickname. In other words, things go bad. Is that the Frank Early or is that the Mike Early?
Well, I think we know which one the players want to see on a day-to-day basis.
And speaking of mics, A&M track this week will be in the front mic, so to speak, because you might go off one day or whatever. SEC Indoor Track Championships.
Yeah, A&M's hosting the SEC Indoor Track Championships for the second straight year. The A&M men are ranked 5th in the country going into the meet. A&M women are 17th. A&M women, it sounds like there's still a little bit of a work in progress. They've got some really high-end athletes, but they're working to build some of that depth as the outdoor season's approaching. And unfortunately, it sounds like really stellar pentathlete Sophia Yakashina, who would probably be the favorite.
Say that name again.
Yeah, she'd probably be the favorite to win that event, which is a pretty impressive event to win. She's going to be limited this week, is what Pat Henry told us on Tuesday. She's got a little bit of a foot deal. Oh, wow. They got the NCAA championships coming up in a couple weeks. They probably want her to be full go for that.
Good point.
But on the men's side, A&M's going to be in the thick of it on the men's side, no doubt. They've got some key returning starters, or runners, I should say. There we go.
Nobody walked. They don't notice any walks either.
Yeah. Pat will give me a hard time for that one. But you think about guys like Jaqueline Scott, Ahmad Robinson, right? Like those are literally your front runners, right? That are going to make an impact and score points for the Aggies. And then they've got guys in the field. They brought in a thrower that has had a pretty good season.
Yeah, he sets a school record every time out, which is his.
Yeah, and
that's the weight throw. I go, what is that? You pick up somebody and throw?
Yeah, no, but that's something that A&M's. They haven't had a guy like that in a little bit, and they got a couple pole vaulters that can really do some damage if they're on that day. But needless to say, it's going to be a competitive weekend out here at the Fasken Indoor Track Facility. And Pat said it yesterday. Look, the changes to the scholarship limits, right, and the roster limits and NIL and revenue sharing, it's really changed the sport of track for good, especially in the SEC where schools have the resources to supply the full amount of scholarships in a sport like track and field.
Well, yeah. You look at it, look at this weekend. Get out there early. If you're on to softball, men's basketball, or track, there's a lot of things going on this weekend.
Yeah, the Reed Arena parking lot, it is going to be full.
I'm going now in parking.
And that's not even because men's and women's tennis is going on, and they've had a pretty good little run here these last couple of weeks. Men have started 2-0 in SEC play. Women got a big win over Texas. This is actually a huge weekend for the Lone Star Showdown Series standings. If you look at it, There's 2.5 points at stake. 1 for men's indoor track and field, 1 for women's indoor track and field, and then a half point for men's basketball. A&M leads the standings 5.5-4. So if A&M could win all 3 points, that'd get them up to 8. You only need 10 to win the season-long standings cup between all the different sports. So a lot at stake when you consider A&M could really separate itself from the Longhorns and win this competition for. They haven't won it in quite a while, and I get it. It just revived last year, but you go back to when they played in the Big 12. Texas had kind of had A&M's number there those last few years. Yeah. So this would be a big deal for the Aggies if they could win the season-long standings.
Anytime they play Texas, it's big. Yeah.
So, Cease.
That's it.
Did we cover our bases?
Covered our bases.
Hey, NFL Draft Combine is this week,
13.
and A&M leads the nation in attendees with 13.
Amazing.
I saw Todd Archer reported this morning that Cassius Howell had a formal meeting with the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to a 3-4 defense, so a little bit interested in kind of an edge rusher, what Howell could bring to the table. I know you would hate to see Howell have to go play for the Cowboys, but I know Gary Blair would love to see him suit up for that get that blue star on the helmet?
Well, I'll wait and see wherever he goes. Let's see if he can do it in the NFL. It's a big step always from college to NFL. So
it is a big step.
We'll wait and see.
Well, hey, be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M sports. We'll be back soon talking more Aggies.